Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Knockout Podcast, episode 57 now. We're back for another week of trying to make sense of this weird and wacky sport that we follow. We've got spinning back elbows, we've got cancelled fights, we've got Diego Sanchez thinking he's going to be the target of some UFC hitman. We've really got it all. To join me, as ever, is Jack. Jack, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And as you said, that is in many ways just the wacky world of Diego Sanchez. What are you going to do about him? Well, now hopefully he retires. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I saw.
We'll see.
We may as well jump into him now, I guess. Diego Sanchez has now been cut from the UFC. I saw again Dan Hardy, who's not come out with some great takes recently, said, "Oh, I'd love to see him get picked up by Bellator or one." It's like, no, I'd love to see him retire,
Why?
please. Please just go. You've there's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason he was the only one left from the original from the original Ultimate Fighter. Because he's absolute batshit crazy and kept fighting. So let's please just have him retire.
Yeah, he's should have retired years ago, to be honest. But he's kept on fighting and putting on fairly awful fights. I can't remember the last good Diego Sanchez fight. So, I mean, some of them have been funny, like the Michelle Pereira one was like not good from a fight standpoint, but it was quite hilarious. So I suppose he's got that going for him. But no, yeah, I hope he retires, and I don't hope anyone picks him up.
Let's hope not. Actually, I do want to get one more. This might be a live reaction to a bit of wonderful MMA news because you've been at work. Have you seen any news around Nick Diaz today?
Oh, I have not. No.
Okay. Well, if you didn't give me the instant reaction, you definitely won't have seen it then. So I'll just read the headline from this press release. Nick Diaz announces partnership with live cam leaders Strip Chat.
What?
Strip Chat, the leading free live camming platform that averaged over 400 million visits per month, today announced a partnership with American mixed martial artist Nick Diaz. As part of this partnership, Diaz will host a 2-hour Strip Chat live stream session in the near future, in which he will invite popular cam girls to his Nick Diaz Academy in California and teach them the basics of self-defense. Nick's fans can also claim 50 free tokens to explore the site and tip the MMA star. Thoughts?
Oh, well, Nick Diaz living his best life, it seems. Fair enough.
I mean, if you wanted a more MMA bit of news, that is it. Apparently, according to one of the people at Strip Chat, he's got the ideal work hard, play hard mentality. So that's something for you.
Fair enough. Very strange, but in a way, I can't say I'm surprised. Honestly, makes perfect sense. Maybe not for Nick Diaz. I don't know if I would have expected Nick Diaz, but certainly a lot of MMA fighters that would. Yeah, I don't know.
Just waiting for like Wayne Rooney next week to like teach them how to do keepy uppies or something.
Yeah,
there's really a market for this.
Very bizarre, but yeah, I don't know. Fair play. He's probably, better that than him probably coming back to fight, because at this point he's quite old, and like with how fairly abusive the UFC's matchmaking can be, he'd probably just get thrown into like someone to be murdered. Like I could not imagine. Like, yeah, I don't know who I want to see Nick Diaz fight. It's probably no one. So
yeah, so I never thought I'd say this, but the immortal words, stick to Strip Chat, Nick. That's maybe the advice I'd give you. Bizarre. I mean, I don't know what on earth you're supposed to make of that, but you don't get any retired sports stars in any other sport going on claiming online strip channels or whatever the hell it is. But that's just MMA for you. But less of that, less of
beautiful stuff.
People who get punched in the head too much and decide to do weird stuff post retirement. Let's actually get into some fights. We've got. Obviously, we're a bit later in the week, but we've got a few fights we can look over from the weekend. And we've also got what was supposed to be Sandhagen versus Dillashaw, which was a very exciting matchup. That was cancelled because Dillashaw got quite a nasty cut above his eye. That's now been replaced with Marina Rodriguez, Michelle Waterson, out of nowhere, really. But there's still some fun fights to talk about on that card. But let's hop back to last week first, and we may as well start with the bizarre entity that is Jiri Procházka, who said he's not going to spend £100,000 on girls or fast cars, but instead return to the forest to hone his craft. I mean, a bizarre man, a bizarre style, but he seems to get the job done. Second round spinning elbow knockout, and it looked like a pretty convincing win from the get-go, really.
I think that as we said, I think like in the build-up, and I think like that anyone that just has experienced Jiri Procházka knows that he is really quite odd, and he fights like it. But it really does work for him. It's very weird stuff he does, but it is like still a decent kind of process behind it. Like he knows kind of himself in terms of his own physical attributes, in that like primarily, well, three main ones are that he's got, from what I've seen, fairly or to very good cardio. Like I've never seen him really get tired, and he fights at a torrid pace. So, although he's only, I suppose, in the UFC gone 2 rounds, well, 4 rounds in total. But so very good stamina. He is insanely durable. Like some of the shots he took, like he got stunned once. I think he got stunned once by the 1000th Reyes left hand that landed, and then like by an up kick, but recovered basically instantly on both of those. So insanely durable, and then he hits very hard as well. And kind of like putting all that together, you have the mix for a very good pressure fighter, like in terms of just physical attributes. And although it's a very weird way that he does it, he really does fight in a way to really just pour pressure on you, despite the weird entries and all that stuff. He really does make use of those physical attributes in his style. I actually, as weird as he is, he's like, I'm genuinely a fan, and like I do enjoy him. Like, and he's very fun for light heavyweight, to be honest.
Yeah, he certainly had in this Uzdemir and Reyes fight, in both these fights, 2 of the highest paced and most entertaining. I mean, looking back, the Uzdemir one was perhaps a bit more slow. This one, I think he really did pour on the pressure a lot more. But 2 really interesting fights, and as you say, it's such a bizarre style. Not necessarily the pressure element of it, but the hands are down the entire time. I remember I was watching the Uzdemir fight back in preparation, and one shot Uzdemir caught him with, you just had his head just leaning out, and Uzdemir just went, all right, I'll just left jab that, and just jabbed his head off, but he didn't move. I mean, the guy is clearly got a granite chin behind that beard. But yeah, an excellent performance. I mean, Reyes was pushed back early, sort of back against the cage, and never really found a way to abate Procházka's pressure, because it was just unrelenting, and seemingly, as with most normal humans, if you sort of hit them hard, they'll back up. Procházka just sort of like shakes it off and keeps on pushing forward. So I'm not really sure what it's going to take to stop him. It's sort of like a light heavyweight pre Poirier and Alvarez loss version of Justin Gaethje. Just absolute unconventional, non-stop forward carnage. Yeah,
I think like qualify that in the sense that it is light heavyweight, so he's not as good, obviously, as Gaethje was. But like in terms of like just the overall kind of approach to fighting, like but kind of very much in the same vein. But yeah, I think that Reyes was really trying to, I think, so to talk about Reyes now, like, he was really, and did kind of convince everyone, like me, us included, that he was a good counterpuncher for 205. And I think that he's a decent counterpuncher in terms of like, he has fairly decent timing. and he's got okay power, but he really is just a left hand. Like, there is nothing more than that, and it is just kind of like waiting on his opponent. He's got defensively, he's very kind of like one note. It is essentially just a high guard. Like, he could do almost nothing than just shell up. And after Procházka hit his body a few times emphatically, like showing one of the weaknesses of his high guard, he really didn't have any answers other than the left hand. And it was kind of just big shots to try and discourage Procházka, which, as we've said, given the fact that he's got a granite chin and he's absolutely fearless, like single shots, single counter shots to discourage him just aren't really a game plan, I think, that's going to work consistently against him. Obviously, you might catch him with the good one and knock him out. But as an overall kind of like reliable plan, trying to counter with single shots isn't the way to go against Procházka, I don't think. I think you need to kind of just focus on more like a kind of like touch him whilst backing up to like frustrate him and get him to kind of overswing, whilst you kind of keep really on your toes and really don't plant and try to throw anything with too much force.
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Yeah, it is difficult. I'm trying to think back to his rise up the rankings. I certainly remember that Weidman knockout was a really good example of him countering, slipping and landing the left hand. I always come back to that John Jones one, and especially in those first 3 rounds, his best work was moving forward, taking the fight to Jones. Those kicks, we've not seen him kick as well or as frequently since that Jones fight. And as you say, when he's moving back, there doesn't seem to be other than in that Weidman fight, he does struggle to do enough to shrug the opponent off, to stop them coming forwards or sort of set up his left hand. So it is a bit of a worry. But then you look at who he's lost to in this 3, and I think there's probably been a bit of an overreaction. I think he did go up the rankings very fast, but I mean, let's not forget his losses have been to John Jones, consensus light heavyweight greatest of all time. Jan Blachowicz, who he lost to for the title and who has then gone on to be Adesanya, and then Procházka, who will probably fight next, if not the one after, for the belt. So it's not like he's losing to, rubbish fighters or fighters that you wouldn't expect him to lose against, or at least be capable of losing against. But I think he certainly has had a pretty tough sort of 3-fight run of it, and perhaps needs to just take a bit of time off. I was surprised actually that he came back this quickly after the Blachowicz fight, although maybe it's been longer than I think. These sort of months have sort of, I mean, it was 9 months, so these months have just merged into one. But I think there's certainly a case now that they need to go back and looking at adding more elements to the game, because as you say, if you stay clear of that left hand, or at least in Procházka's case, have an iron chin that can mean you can take the shots, then he's not got sort of enough to offer offensively or enough seemingly to keep him out of harm's way.
No. I think he does need to really go and kind of rethink and like revamp his skill. Really, he needs to, in many ways, just I think change his approach to fighting. In many ways, I think that he kind of managed to athlete his way up the rankings, whilst being fairly limited, being basically a straight left and a left high kick. And we did see a few more elements in the Jones fight, but he does need to kind of like just come with a more kind of coherent process of like how he wants to have the fight that he wants, because as we saw here, and I suppose in the Blachowicz fight as well, he really wasn't capable of making the fight go into the areas that he wants it to be in. So, yeah, I think some rethinking is needed from Reyes. And then, yeah, as you said, from Procházka, I think that Blakovic and Glover are booked.
Yeah, I think so.
So I imagine that Procházka probably just sits out and waits for the winner of that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't see anyone else.
Yeah.
Who gets it ahead of him? Maybe Rakic. Did he win his last fight? Who did he fight? Was it Anthony Smith?
I think he fought Thiago Santos.
Oh, he fought Thiago Santos. In that one. So
yeah,
maybe there's a eliminator between those two, but I imagine he's no worse than third next if you take Glover Teixeira to be the next one up. But a good performance from him, and he's certainly an exciting prospect for whoever he faces next. Co-main event, Chikadze Cub Swanson. Chikadze is slowly sort of building his way up the featherweight rankings, and this certainly represented his high profile win. I think on commentary, Bisping said it quite well. You've either got to be all the way in or all the way out against Chikadze, and Swanson just found it awfully difficult to cut the range to get in past those kicks, and Chikadze varying it well, setting him up with a few kicks to the head, and then coming through with that deadly kick to the liver, and that was all she wrote. So a really good performance from him. I mean, there's not too much to say because that only went on for 63 seconds.
Yeah, I think that, as you said, Giga did do a good job, like very early, as soon as Cub tries to kind of the first time he tried to close the distance. I think Giga hit him with a solid leg kick and a straight. So he really early kind of established in Cub's mind that I'm the much longer fighter, and if you just step past this certain range, you're going to get hit with something. And I think it did a very good job of discouraging Cub from essentially just doubting his own entries, and really kind of made Cub try and solve the puzzle of how to get in. And that allowed Chikadze to kind of go to work at the long range, whilst Cub was kind of in the process of trying to figure out the best way to get in on him. But before he could figure that out, obviously, Giga set up his kicking range, and he's very effective from there clearly, and hit a lovely liver kick. It was a very nice kick, and it'll be interesting to see where Giga goes, because he's not really been one for this. I think he's only his second finish in the UFC, and it's come against his stiffest test, which is a bit odd. So maybe he's kind of the guy that fights up to his level of competition, or maybe literally just caught him with the one shot in 100 that that's right in the liver, right in the right spot, and puts his man down. So no, it'd be interesting to see kind of if Giga can continue to put on kind of these more emphatic performances, as opposed to kind of his previous fights have been, he's clearly won, but he's never kind of it hasn't seemed like he's pushed out of second or third gear.
Yeah, it's I think he called out Max Holloway after the fight.
No.
I'm not sure that's the one you want, or at least the one Max is gonna accept. But there's certainly a lot of options out there at the featherweight. Ion Cutelaba, Justin Jacoby. I can't say I caught this one, but trust Ion Cutelaba to be the guy who, a few weeks on from the Jeremy Stevens Drakkar close weigh-in debacle, to be the one to grab the opponent's neck at the next weigh-in, and just set a great example of how to behave at a weigh-in. But that's Cutelaba for you. 3 other decisions that we previewed last week: Sean Strickland, Jotko. Sean Strickland getting the win. Davalishvili defeating Cody Stamen, and our girl on the prelims, Luma Lukbumi, defeating Sam Hughes. Which one of those did you watch, if any, and which one caught your eye?
I watched Davalishvili and Stamen and Loma Hughes, and I also caught, because I heard it was very good after the fact, I caught Brown Kamaka. So I thought, I'll start with Dvalishvili, I suppose. I mean, not too much to say. But I thought that Cody Stamann is like a very good test for bantamweights. Like he is like in the kind of like most well-meaning like sense of the word, a very good gatekeeper. If you're kind of trying to test a bantamweight prospect, putting them up against Cody Stamann is one of the best ways to do it because he will test you in all phases. And as you saw here, Dvalishvili had a much harder time getting his takedown game going, like compared to like normally where he hits like 20 takedowns a fight or whatever he hits. He had a tough time getting it going, and he also had a fairly tough time with Stamann's jab. I thought Stamann did a very good job, and it was a very close fight. But Dvalishvili is like, I found like he is quite samey or like limited in like his takedown entries. It's very much a kind of like 1-2 blast double, and he does that consistently, but he's clearly very good at it. But he is very good in that he knows that he's got essentially endless cardio, which is just basically a cheat code. Like even if he's doing like the wrong things, it doesn't matter because it's not making him tired. So he can just carry on and keep going. And he's cut like, and over time, he was just good at kind of like implementing what he wanted to do on Stamann and just kind of like wore him down with that. In summary, Cody Stamann is a very tough test for most bantamweight prospects and is a good gatekeeper to have around. Dvalishvili is sort of limited, but his endless cardio kind of like makes up for it. And over time, he has a way of applying his game on his opponents because he can just keep going and keep doing anything he wants, really.
Yeah, no, I think it was a solid performance from him. I still, as he said, I still think there is an element that he might come unstuck against some of the opposition sort of further up the tree. I still think there's perhaps not too much of an element of disguise, as you said, with some of his stuff, but the pace he sets is pretty intense. I say one thing I was impressed with, and I hadn't quite realised, is the level of wrestling that Stamann had. I mean, there was some really fun wrestling exchanges in there. I mean, we mentioned the other two decisions. I may as well take my plodding man, Sean Strickland. I mean, just sort of came out of nowhere, but plods around very slowly, but seems to just get the job done. A solid 30, 27, 30, 27, 29, 28 decision against Jotko. I think he was 15th in the rankings before. I mean, who knows what they actually mean, but he's at least a guy that I think is perhaps found a weight that he's comfortable at. And yeah, I think with the middleweight division where it looks like, there is opportunities to work your way up pretty quickly. I think he's someone who could find himself in sort of a Derek Brunson sort of esque position within a couple of fights. So it'll be interesting to see if he can pull someone from above him. But an interesting fighter, even if he has been around for quite a while. And then I'll go at the bottom, Luma Lukbumi, 29-28 all round. She said she felt a bit sluggish in the post fight presser. I mean, what I certainly found surprising, especially in the first round, and I can't remember how it continued as the fight went on, but Sam Hughes just willingly walking into the clinch, almost initiating the clinch, which, I'm no MMA tactician and far from me to tell Sam Hughes how to win a fight, but I would say that going into the clinch willingly against Luma Lukbumi is not the percentage play to win a fight against her, but a good win from her.
Loma really did kind of like boss her around in the clinch in this fight, which was kind of like, I really do like Loma Lukbumi, but I think that there is kind of an extent that she struggled to kind of get her in space striking game going in the UFC, and I think that she did struggle again here. you see it kind of like in glimpses. You see her kick quite well. Like she'll kick to the body or like feint kicks and come up to the head. I think she did that like in the second or third round. And she will do that quite well. But I think, I don't know what, like, whatever it is, maybe just in the kind of transition over to MMA, she has struggled, I think, to get her kind of like full arsenal of like stand-up weapons going, which has meant that she has relied on the fact that she is like far and away like so much better in the clinch than basically everyone she's fighting, and from there like is which does easily her best work, and she has actually really like adapted that quite well for MMA. It's like particularly in this fight she used it to take top position multiple times, and is doing better now at kind of like maintaining that top position and kind of doing effective work on the ground. So still very, very solid in the clinch, and has an advantage against basically everyone she fights there. But I would, as she kind of like gets more comfortable and she moves up the rankings, I would like to see her kind of bringing a more like complete kind of game in and threaten people more with her striking.
Yeah, I think she's definitely going to need that, especially as you say, as she moves up. I think she is someone alongside maybe Michelle Waterson, who we'll get onto later, who would thrive in a hypothetical atomweight division. Yeah. So I think certainly having sort of the need to diversify her attacks and her ability, as you say, to get off her full repertoire of striking game, especially as you come up against the bigger girls in the division. I think certainly against Angela Hill, she struggled with that, but we'll see. And she's certainly one who will obviously keep our eyes on. That was basically it from that card on the weekend. So we may as well turn our attention to the fights happening this week. Obviously, as we said at the start, we lost Dillashaw versus Sandhagen to an eye injury, which is a shame, but there's still a good number of intriguing fights on the card. What's the one that's sticking out for you as your one to keep an eye
on? Probably it's actually a difficult one. There are the one that I'm probably most initially kind of intrigued by would be Carlos Diego Ferreira versus Gregor Gillespie. But I think, which is like, I think will be a very fun fight. But the more I think about it, like the more that I think it really should favor Gillespie. Beneil Dariush had not like Dariush and Ferreira was a very good fight, but Dariush did have quite a lot of success managing to get takedowns and hold down Ferreira. Like in the first round, I think he did it mostly off a knockdown, but still, as the fight kind of went on, he managed to get those takedowns and spend some time in top position. So Gillespie, who is absolutely relentless at chasing takedowns, like really is pretty one-track minded in what he wants to do when he gets in there. I think we'll go to that early, and I think we'll have to see how Ferreira can kind of threaten him and try and kind of discourage him from doing that. Because I think it will be difficult for Ferreira to get kind of like his pressure game going on the feet. Gillespie is like not amazing on the feet, but he does have a fairly decent and at least fairly powerful jab. So I think he could use that to kind of like as the basis to kind of press forward and get Ferreira kind of against the cage and shooting. Although one thing I have like kind of noticed about Gillespie is he really shoots from very far away. Like for MMA, you see like most takedowns, a lot of them come either from the clinch or like from very close range shots. Gillespie shoots from miles, which is really what got him in trouble against Kevin Lee, because Lee was a good enough wrestler and had quite a low stance, that he was able to just really like. Gillespie wasn't even able to get close with the range he was shooting on those takedowns. So with that, with the like length of like how far out the takedowns come, Ferreira could either do a good job of just generally avoiding them, like he's got decent wrestling, but also if he sees it from a long way out, he can maybe like you have more time to like set up the submission. So I think it could be a bit dangerous from Gillespie if he's shooting from really far out. Ferreira could catch like snatch an X. So it'll be an interesting fight. Think that we'll probably get some fun grappling exchanges for as long as it lasts. And I expect it to be a fairly high paced and fun fight.
Yeah, I think I'd echo everything you said. I think especially against Dariush, I expected perhaps Dariush not to go to the wrestling as much because I thought there would be a greater threat from Ferreira on the bottom. And maybe he was expecting that too, and so that sort of took him by surprise. But certainly against Gillespie, you know what Gillespie's going to be looking to do. So yeah. I imagine he will have put in some work in terms of either keeping it off the ground, or if he does get on the ground, sort of trying to work something from the back, however difficult that is going to be. But yeah, I think that promises to be quite a fun one, and certainly an interesting test for Gillespie, who was supposed to be coming back against Riddell a couple of weeks ago, but this will be his first fight since, well, mid 2019 when that Kevin Lee fight happened. I think the one for me that is interesting to me the more I think about it is the Neil Derby, as you coined it before we went on. Neil Magny versus Jeff Neal. Neil Magny, who is sort of, I guess, if we're talking about that, Cody Stamen in the bantamweight, I think Neil Magny probably takes up quite a similar position in the welterweight division in terms of a tricky customer that you've got, that is well rounded in most assets, and you need to be sort of very good to get past him. He had a good win over probably Lawler. Was that his last fight?
Yeah, I think it might be.
No, against Michael Chiesa he lost.
Oh yeah,
in that 5-round fight a while back. Jeff Neal coming off that disappointing performance against Wonder Boy, stepping up. That was quite a big step up after knocking out Mike Perry. But this is sort of a step back, sort of like Luque, who sort of went up, fought Wonder Boy, and then has come back down to the pack. This is a fun fight. Obviously, I said, Magny, he is sort of like the MMA meta, the sort of like grindy, high-paced, up against the cage, initiate the clinches, maybe takedowns. He's obviously massive size and reach. And you've got Jeff Neal, who will just march forward with the left hand and look to use his power. I think this could be a fun one. Hopefully, Jeff Neal has worked on some stuff since the Wonder Boy fight, because I guess probably in a similar sense with Reyes, he can't rely on that just sort of like setting up the left hand and sort of a lot of athleticism. There needs to be a bit more mystery behind setting up those shots. But I think that's a really fun fight that I can see going both ways, probably similar to the Ferreira Gillespie fight.
Yeah, I think I'd echo kind of like your points on Neal. He's he's quite a slow-paced fighter that's content to kind of like do not very much for decent periods before he then just absolutely explodes into something trying to take your head off. And he is very much kind of like, in that sense, I'd like to see him kind of have a bit more of a kind of overall process to kind of like point score and like build attritive damage and kind of like set traps, rather than just kind of like waiting, throwing out, like he does, like he throws out feints, stuff like that, but really is waiting for that burst to catch you. I'd like to see him kind of like basically put money in the bank a little bit more. And also, he's very much a headhunter. So in that sense, I'd like to see him go to the legs, which has been very effective against Magny in the past, if you beat up his legs. So, and also to the body as well, which I think is something that got him in a bit of trouble in the Wonder Boy fight. Because he didn't mix it up enough in that regard, and Wonder Boy is very elusive, and I think that he would have really benefited from kicking his legs a little bit there. So yeah, I'd like to see Magny. I'd like to see Jeff Neal, the other Neal, mix it up in terms of where he's striking his targets. So yeah, but no, as you said, it will be a fairly fun fight. Neil Magny's tough, so like he'll make it a scrap basically, no matter what.
Elsewhere, we sort of jumped around, but sandwiched. Well, I say sandwiched. Sandwiched at the bottom of the card, if that's even a thing. Amanda Ribas, Angela Hill. Angela Hill coming off a good win against someone whose name escapes me, but I think she went crazy with the elbows, if memory. Ashley Yoder, and Amanda Ribas coming off that knockout loss against the main eventer Marina Rodriguez. I mean, always get a good fight off Angela Hill. I mean, her resume in terms of who she's taken on in the strawweight division is just crazy. I think she rarely gets much of a layup in terms of allowing her to go up the rankings. But what we've always said with her, and I think still stands true, is there is the constant improvement in all of her fights against Yoda. Perhaps didn't get to see all of that, but this is a good test against someone like Amanda Ribas, who, you know, probably would have been in that main event spot if she'd have beaten Marina Rodriguez, but certainly carries a lot of talent and certainly promising good wins against the likes of Randa Marcos and Mackenzie Dern.
Angela Hill, like I thought she looked great against Yoda last time. I think she still improving. I think she very nearly got the finish on a couple of occasions. But I think that one thing so in that fight, if I remember, she went whilst trying to finish Yoda, which was on multiple occasions, as I said, she often got taken down because I think she just put too much into it, essentially got a bit carried away and then got taken down. And that's something in this fight, not necessarily once she's got her hurt and nearly finish her, but just overall, she will have to be wary about the takedowns against Ribas, who that is generally what she wants to go out there and do. And she's fairly dangerous when she's on the ground. She's got a pretty good submission game. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Hill can cope with that. But yeah, Hill does still continue to improve on the feet, has a decent kind of pressure and counter punching game going now. So yeah, I think that'll be actually a really fun fight, and I always enjoy Angela Hill fights. So yeah, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, that's certainly a good one to open up the card. As I said, we are jumping sort of up and down all over the card. I'm gonna swiftly move past Marcos Rogerio de Lima versus Maurice Green, because I'm not quite sure how that sort of weaseled its way into the fourth last fight on the card. Cerrone versus Alex Morono. That was supposed to be Cerrone versus Sanchez. I can't say I've got too much to say on this, but Morono coming in on short notice. We'll see. Actually, I think Cerrone's last fight was against Nico Price, but they've both got common recent opponents in Anthony Pettis, both losing. Fun fight, I guess, maybe. I mean, who knows what Cerrone really offers at this stage, but could be a good opportunity for Morono coming in on late notice.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this either. But yeah, it should be fairly interesting. Donald Cerrone, especially against kind of these days against young up and comers, will generally put on quite a fun fight. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what Morono's got for him, really.
All right, let's go to the main event. Bizarre sort of circumstances surrounding this one. Obviously, as I said, for probably the millionth time. Not the original main event, but this one wasn't one that was scheduled to take place on this card. This has been drafted on a week's notice rather than promoting one of the other fights to the main event slot. Marina Rodriguez versus Michelle Waterson. Marina Rodriguez coming in off that knockout victory against Amanda Ribas. And Michelle Waterson, whose last fight was Angela Hill. It was a split decision victory over Angela Hill. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what the thinking is behind putting this one on late notice. You never really know what you're going to get with Michelle Waterson, whether you're going to get her sort of faint jabbing sort of 5 foot away from her opponent, or whether you're going to get a fun fight like we did with Angela Hill. Marina Rodriguez, I'm quite interested in. Obviously got a lot of power at the weight. Well, I say obviously, I mean, she knocked out her last opponent, which is rare in the women's strawweight division. But I can't say I've seen too much of her. I remember seeing the Esparza loss, which was pretty unlucky. But I'm not really sure why this fight has managed to work its way up to a main event. I don't think it's particularly main event level. Maybe it's just the fact that it's a women's fight and they know that Watson and Rodriguez can probably go 5 rounds. But any huge analytical thoughts that you want to sort of bestow upon me that I haven't thought
of? Not particularly. I think that Marina Rodriguez is quite interesting. She's like a fairly, like, as you said, a good puncher, like for the weight class. She hits very hard and she's fairly decent at like kind of like applying it and knowing how to use it. She's got like a fairly decent kind of like counter right hand. The one thing so I think that with Waterson, who will be kicking a lot and trying to jab from very far out, but also the fact that Rodriguez is quite a lot bigger than her. I think that I can see Waterson getting cracked on the way in. I think that's something we'll see a few times probably. But then on the kind of like flip side is that Rodriguez's takedown defense isn't the best. And Waterson's like not a hugely kind of like deadly offensive wrestler or submission threat, but she will go to it. It is something that she kind of like has in her arsenal. So I expect it to actually be a fairly competitive fight with Waterson being able to kind of like score takedowns to kind of like relieve the pressure on her, and Rodriguez being able to kind of like crack her on the feet and hurt her and possibly put her away. I also think that Waterson has somewhat... Well, it's interesting. Both of these seem to like kind of get their reads in fights over time. So it'll be interesting to see how the late rounds go if they get there. Both kind of like taking time to kind of like develop the game plan in the fight. So that's about it. I'd probably take Marina Rodriguez, to be honest, at this point. Waterson is on kind of like, I think she's quite late in her career. I feel like she's been around for a while. So kind of just from that, I think that take Rodriguez as like the up and comer. And I think that would be more interesting for the division as well. So I'm going with Rodriguez.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think I fancy Rodriguez to get the job done. But that's about it for that card and probably this podcast as a whole. We'll be back. Not as a whole in terms of shutting down, but at least for this week. That sounded rather more dramatic than it needs to be. But we'll be back next week to preview some of the action from the weekend, or to review some of the action from the weekend, I should say, and to look forward to UFC 262 at the weekend, which has lost Nate Diaz to UFC 263, but has got Oliveira Chandler for the lightweight belt, Ferguson Dariush as a co-main, and Shane Burgos, Edson Barboza, which I've certainly got my eye on opening up that main card. Unless you've got anything else to say, Jack?
No, I think that's it from me.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. Have a good week as ever, and we'll see you for the next.
See ya.